Hello, I'm Jairus Hansen, and with me today is Dr. Patchanee Malikhao. Thank you, Pat, for joining us.
Hi, Jairus.
And Pat is the author of a very provocative titled book called Sex in the Village. I love that. Culture, Religion, and HIV/AIDS in Thailand. So that's a very interesting title. And can you tell us a little bit about this book?
It's about sociological perspectives on HIV/AIDS prevention in Thailand, and it's really about a religious-based approach, namely the Protestant approach and the Buddhist approach that they are being used in two Thai communities.
Well, that's what I found so interesting about the book, because there have been many studies about HIV prevention and AIDS, but you really take a very different approach to studying these populations. And could you talk a little bit about the role of religion and culture in Thailand and why that's so critical to any study of HIV and AIDS?
Thailand is a very interesting venue for HIV/AIDS because, first of all, Thailand has never been colonized, but yet it has absorbed Western ideas and technology, and of course Christianity as well since the 16th century. But yet Thailand has never been kind of adopted Christianity into its religious culture. It remains Buddhist. And of course, the second one is the sexual norms of Thai people, that they are so distinctive from the Westerns. So it's a good place to study HIV/AIDS, especially religious approach, because we can compare the Christianity and the Buddhist way of life as a kind of in a comparative way.
One of the things I found so interesting about the book was the interviews that you were conducting with the religious leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you find as you were talking to Buddhist and Christian religious leaders? How did you find their relationship with their communities, especially talking about sexual practices? It must have been very challenging.
The religious leaders are not supposed to talk about sex and especially HIV prevention or condom use. They just use the idea that people have to be immune from immorality, such as sexual misconducts or imbibing intoxicants. So they just use that kind of global concept that saying that abstinence and be faithful. So for the condom use, for the prevention of HIV, they asked the public health specialists or those officers to come and talk about. But actually, the religious leaders, they don't talk about such thing.
I find it really interesting, too, that your study really takes the approach from the perspective of a health campaign. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yet, the religious leaders cannot talk about sex to ask people to prevent from, HIV/AIDS by using condoms and so on. But they are launching campaigns in their own communities in order to give awareness to the people or to try to change the behavior. But the religious leaders alone cannot use their sermons, so they have to rely on the secular approaches, such as training youth to talk about condoms, to show films, or to have exhibitions, or to invite people who are living with HIV/AIDS to talk in a community about their life experience. So it's kind of integrated approach. And of course, the villagers are also engaged in that process. Yeah.
There are so many studies of HIV and AIDS around the world, but this is a very unique situation. And what makes the Thai situation so unusual when it comes to comparing this kind of a health campaign to, say, any part of Africa or any part of the United States?
Thailand has been exemplary for HIV prevention for quite a while. We are known for the 100% condom use program, which is, I would call it, a structural approach.
That's an extraordinary
success
rate.
HIV prevention, because of the law that enforced the people who are the sex workers, the clients of the sex workers who use condom. But then the situation has changed because the brothels, they are no longer there. In this day, that was like almost 15 years ago. But now, because of what's the so-called globalization or the modernization, that the brothels has turned into karaoke or into bars and restaurants and all kind of venues. So that model that used to be very successful is becoming less successful, of course, because you don't know where to find them, and because the sexuality of the people has changed. Because before people would go to brothels, the males would go, even though before they get married or after marriage, they would go to brothels. But now, these days, you can go casual, you can go either to massage parlor or whatever. So it has becoming very more difficult for the policymakers or for the practitioners or public health officers to go and track them down. So it's not as unique as the other places, though, because the culture is based on, of course, still very much based on polygamous behavior of the males, also in Africa. But what governs the behavior is the different religious worldview, the Buddhist worldview that the Thai people have, and of course it's so different from those in Africa that they have, of course, governed by either the Catholic worldview or a Protestant worldview. So I'm using now to answer one of the questions in the beginning that you asked, is that it is so unique because Thailand has become a Buddhist country for quite a long while, and Thailand experienced the modernization from the West. Everything that we say, okay, the change of sexual behavior, the way that people behave, the using of technology, you just blame it to the West. So this is the first time that we're going to test whether the Thai religious culture has any impact on the sexual behavior of the people or not, through the adaptation of the global perspective of the UNS or WHO, the WHO, that's saying that people should use religious leaders to boost up the morality in order to improve, in order to change the sexual behavior, because people who have HIV/AIDS are seen as people who are immoral. So religious leaders are to boost up. So, but it is so important that the Thai Buddhist people are quite different from the people who are Christians or Catholics, because Protestants or Catholics, because they don't look at the world the way the Christians do. Mm-hmm. They don't believe in God. So they don't believe in God. They don't just say, okay, you have to be faithful, you have to, be faithful to your spouse, and so on, just like your ABC that you apply, you use for the prevention messages that you are using with the Protestant or the Catholic, right? And of course, the condom use. The Thai people, of course, they are talking about it in a different way, or they can joke about sex. They can talk about it in a different way than the fundamentalist Protestant who do not want to talk about it. So that's to make them different, the way they look at things, first of all, and that the way that they believe in in the religious leaders is so different, because they don't have to follow that kind of commandments and so on. It's kind of a loose culture, that they have their own, okay, of course, precept 5 and so on, but nobody knows exactly what the core values of Buddhism is exactly when I investigate this. But the Protestant, of course, they know exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what is their commandments and so on.
Right, so the different social structure, the different culture, the different way people interact with each other, and the social pressures that are on family units and within the various religions have a lot to do with this. Now, you mentioned something else about the modernization thesis. And can you describe for the people who might be watching this who may not know what the modernization paradigm is all about? Can you describe that briefly?
Yeah, modernization paradigms is relies on the way of linearity thinking, which says that the Western world is the ultimate goal for development. So whatever you do, you have to pass a stage of change in your life, either with a health theory or a development theory, that you have to adopt, you have to think about it, pondering about it, and then before you take a decision and confirmation, that kind of stuff. But in real life, life is not like that. We are not going to think into step and so whether people are going to use condom, do they have to have something going on in their black box, whether they're going to adapt or whatever. It forgets about the context wherein the people live. So what has impact on our decision is not just what's going on, psychological, cognitive theory or whatever, but it's also, of course, the religion that we are talking about, the ideology, the law, poverty, education. There are a lot of things that impinge on our decision. And especially when you talk about HIV/AIDS, it's about sex. Sometimes you are in a condition that you know a lot of things, but you cannot control. So modernization paradigm, talking about using media as in the social marketing approach to tell people what to do in a top-down fashion. So, but it is so ineffective to say, okay, you're gonna do this, that, because HIV/AIDS is about the changing of lifestyle. If people do not want to change their lifestyle, though people do not choose it, you cannot force them to change. That's why I'm looking at it with a different worldview, different paradigm. So the way that I'm writing this book is not based on the diffusion theory or the modernization paradigm. I'm using another development paradigm or the multiplicity paradigm, which looks at the whole issues of HIV/AIDS, the complexity of it in so many levels. So that's, do I answer your question?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I think, if I put this in different words, I would say the modernization paradigm really imposes values from outside, but what you're doing is actually finding the local values and finding out how those local values have dynamics in themselves that really affect someone's behavior. Is that correct?
Yeah, what I am doing is that how the local appropriate the messages or the cultural products that they received from the global, from the UNAIDS, from the WHO, or from those kind of preaching sermons that the people gave. How do they apply and reapply in such a way that it suits them? So the way that you intend it to be may not be the way they think, or the way they so. That's how you see that happen a lot in the modernization paradigm, that you say, okay, you're going to do da, and the people just go in their setting and they just do something else. And then you just found out that the money that you use in order to implement that by telling them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, look, do this, do that, it didn't work.
And it's not relevant.
It's not relevant.
So, yes, so it's money that's wasted. Well, I think what's so interesting about the approach that you've taken not only to doing your research, but also into investigating this new paradigm or this new approach.
Right.
Would this have utility in other communities as well?
I don't get your questions.
Well,
Can you say
could we
again?
take the same kind of model that you've applied in terms of looking at HIV/AIDS
Oh,
in
okay.
Thailand and bring it to the United States, for example?
Sure, you can. I mean, the paradigm is there to be tested. It looks at different levels of analysis, and from the macro to regional, national, and community level. And you look at different flows of globalization. We are talking about globalization. You were talking about flows of the media, flow of the participation, and flow of power. It exists in every society.
Yes.
And the thing is that we are talking about development communication that no country in the world has claimed that they are fully developed. So look at HIV/AIDS problem in the US. You see that there are a lot of problems going on with the Black African American community. Like now, 50% of the African American of the people who contract HIV/AIDS are African Americans. So you see that there are a lot of problems, institutional discrimination, or education, or poverty, and so on, going on in this so-called developed country. So why not? Why can't you use a multiplicity paradigm to take a look at the problem and analyze it from the policy level up down to the community level or the church level that uses for HIV/AIDS campaign to the community, how it has changed or how people interpret it differently.
And you mentioned, one of the many things that you mentioned was the role of media.
Sure.
And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role of media, particularly in the Thai villages that you were studying. Because again, globalization has so much to do with the flow of media around the world.
Sure. Let's start from the mass communication approach that we normally use for what the so-called social marketing. We have been using that for quite some time. I mean, since the 1990s, the beginning of 1990s, that we bombarded all the radio and TV and so on to raise awareness of people on HIV/AIDS, or to tell people that HIV/AIDS is not is a deadly disease and that kind of stuff. So we have been using that, but the problem is that the message that we send through to the people can be interpreted negatively. Like when you say you have AIDS, you're gonna die. So people just like panic, and people are not cannot cope with that fact that they are going to die. So some people committed suicide before. And as a result, the media have to have some kind of ethics, or we have to, the policymakers or the media policymakers have to think about the impact that's going to happen that they couldn't foresee. So we now talking about the community media, which people can take part or engage in the production of it and make it themselves, rather than coming from the top, from the Ministry of Public Health and so on. But that kind of mass communication approach is very expensive. They use it extensively for quite a few years, but then they ran out of money because it costs a lot of money. So they have to take to another way, community approach.
You mentioned the community approach, and I think one of the things that is so challenging in any kind of health campaign is that you have to mobilize so many parties at the same time. You have to mobilize the health community, the media community, the policymakers, and those policymakers can run the gamut of all sorts of government policy and social policy people. But is there a place to start? Given the kind of methodology that you've been using, would you suggest that there is a good structure that someone in a community could look at, then start to put these policymakers and these activists together?
I would look at the civic sector first, how the public are interested in this subject, in this issue, and look at the community at community level. So we can build up from the grassroots level with the help of course, the private and the government sector, that we could branch out the networking. So, for instance, the group that I'm studying, is the group of monks who united themselves to fight against HIV/AIDS voluntarily to help the people.
And that seemed like such a stretch to begin with.
Right.
But when you realize that it is their mission to help humanity.
They started with a community where a lot of people died of AIDS, and one monk helped. And later on, they branched it out to come 50 temples who working together, and they could bring up this policy up to the Sangha level or to the monk's body level, the Buddhist level, and they could say that you can change the policy from helping the charity approach, like the hospice approach, which people donate a lot in order to keep HIV/AIDS, people living with HIV/AIDS separate in a prison or in a community separately. So that kind of approach, they have endorsed that they are not going to use it. They're going to help with the community approach, where people are being home, sick people are taken care of by their own family members. So that kind of thing that's branched out. And now we are talking about the interfaith approach, that the Buddhist or the Christian join force, and the Muslim also, to prevent HIV/AIDS. So that kind of thing. So it's branched out.
And what sort of success have the Thai villages had so far in trying this approach?
You mean the religious approach?
The religious approach.
The one thing that I investigated in my research that was done in 2005 was that the religious approach itself did not work out in terms of change people behavior, health behavior, such as motivate them to use condom, but it had some positive way ramification about the poverty reduction, which is also part of the contextual problem, that because people are so poor, they sell their daughters to prostitution, or people are so poor they decided, the girls are so poor they decided to trade sex, or they just want something that they couldn't afford, so they just sell them their body. So religious leaders are very useful for that, but not to say that, okay, you have AIDS, you have no morality, right, and I'm gonna inject immorality in you, and then you're gonna change your behavior. It doesn't work that way, because morality has nothing to do with religiosity. And I have proved it statistically that if you are not religious, you still can prevent HIV/AIDS. You have sexual morality. It's not a causative effect. So did I answer your question? Of course, religious leaders are still important. They are opinion leaders, but they have to be, revisited. This kind of approach. You're gonna use it, but in a way that they can do. It's not like, because monks they have to take celibacy, and the pastor who talk about the Bible, they cannot gonna come and say, okay, you use condom and so on and so forth.
And I think one of the things that you're saying is that from the traditions of the West, it's been sort of, you must do this, and it's very, as you've mentioned, very linear in modernization.
Right.
Things. But change occurs in many different ways, and sometimes you set out to change not what you thought you were going to change, but other things in the whole social process. And I think what you're really saying is that by looking at the localism approach and taking it from the culture perspective, you really are able to kind of see how different systemic changes will operate within a community. And I think it's absolutely fascinating.
Thank you. That's the beauty of using the ontology of relativism that I would encourage researchers to use, instead of use the objectivism. That of course there is no truth out there to find out. It's all socially constructed. So we have to devise the way in order to find out. Of course, numbers are important. Quantitative data are important to see, okay, we have reached that kind of prevalence, or have reduced the number of infection rates, or epidemiological surveillance and that kind of stuff. It's used at a certain level, so you can indicate that. But in order to find out what's going on behind the numbers, behind the scenes, you need to use other methods in order to find out. And that I would like to challenge people who do work on HIV/AIDS prevention to see the contextual problem, structural problem, and also the worldview. That I did a lot of research on different worldview symbolic representations, and how the people organize themselves, social organization, and the value system that people have in order to understand completely what the problem lies.
Right. That's one of the things I thought was so fascinating in your book, because you did take a multifaceted approach to understanding the dynamics before you could even see what the potential would be for change. And I thought that was terrific. Where do you hope to go with some of this research? Are you going to carry on in the same area?
I am doing it in such a way that now I just move it a little bit from the religious perspective to the behavior change communication, just to check the school-based intervention to see whether education could help. If you say religious leaders do not help to change the condom use or the behavior change, and now Thailand launched the education program to teach sex education at school in either in the middle school level or high school level. Would like to know whether that could change or follow up in a kind of longitudinal research to see whether it has changed the concept, the norms, the values of those kids or not. And I'm doing that. But I would like to say something about not only just check on the people. I also did check on the curriculum, the textbooks. And if the textbook, I found that the textbooks say still a lot more about gender inequality. To say that girls can be raped if they wear sensual clothes, like bare shoulder and that kind of stuff, because you ask for it, that kind of stuff. So that kind of worldview of that values, you can see it from the document analysis. And also, of course, the media that portrays kind of sexual violence or kind of violence on TV. So that's what I'm interested in, to see how these content analysis of the media and the books and the use will have any impact on the change of attitude and norms of these kids.
It's fascinating work. So I can see how you can combine your interest as a health researcher, a lecturer, a communication scholar. You've done all of it in this, and I'm looking forward to so many more of your studies. And so today we've been talking with Dr. Patchanee Malikhao. She is the author of Sex in the Village. I don't know how I can get that wrong. Sex in the Village, Culture, Religion, and HIV/AIDS in Thailand. This book is one in a series of communication for development and social change. Pat, I've really enjoyed talking with you this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Janice. I appreciate your questions.